etc. I've just started the stream, and now I'm going to talk for a minute, and let's see if I get any feedback or echoes or anything weird like that. Yep, there I am. I don't hear any echoes. Spooky echoes. Because it's Halloween. At least it's Halloween here in the US. Okay. It sounds like we're doing okay. I'm not hearing anything. Okay. No audio issues. Okay, well, I'm going to take the headphones off so I don't have to hear myself yeah, I don't have to hear myself echoing in my own ears. There we go. Welcome everybody to a live stream, and we're going to do some Blackbox log analysis. Yeah, here we go. I have right now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, I have like 15. So I'm going to see what I can do about getting these all done in this session. Some of these are from, if we go back to 2328, it was posted on October 1st. It has been literally a month since Norwenkel posted, Norbert posted. So yeah, I'm overdue, but I am super busy. I have finished the Rampage build. That's the one with the Combini in it, and I've got to fly it a little bit. And actually, hang on. No, not that one. That one. There we go. Hang on. Let me find for you something. Which one? I think that one. Check this out. It has no sound. I don't know why it has no sound. My camera has an issue. This is the Rampage build flying. Here we go. Let's see what you think of this. And there's no sound again. That's not a mistake. It has no sound because my camera started acting weird. Oh, check this out. Oh, good save, huh? What do you think of that? Oh, man. So then I crashed, and I tried again. But then here I got some actual flying in without crashing. Let's see. These 4-blade props fly pretty nicely. They're pretty fast on these 2300 kV motors. I'm still sort of figuring out where the speed comes from, but they fly really nice. Oh, yeah. Doing some, now this, what you're watching here is actually DVR footage. No, this isn't the DVR footage, is it? No, this is the high def footage. I'm sorry. The DVR footage is, hang on, I gotta show you this too, just real quick. What am I gonna show you? Here we go. Now this is DVR footage, but it's DVR footage from the Runcam Eagle 4.3. And hang on, there's some. Here you go. What do you think of that? Does that look good or what? I've been flying. I reviewed the 16.9 Runcam Eagle, and I have a review of the 4.3 one in the works, but I'll give you guys on the live stream a little sneak preview. Check out the light. First of all, just check out how overall good the picture works, but the wide dynamic range algorithm is amazing. If you watch as I go, no, not the power loop, hold on. Under these trees, if you just look at the shadows of the trees, there's so much detail across the whole picture. Watch as I fly under the shadow of this tree, how the whole picture, nothing is in sort of absolute darkness or absolute light. It's just very good dynamic range across the whole picture. And I got to tell you, there's some things about the way the Runcam Eagle handles its picture that I don't like, and you can hear about them when I release the full review video. But the overall sort of dynamic range, light handling, and just quality of the picture is so good. I'm half agree with Bruce when he says this may be the best FPV camera ever. Yeah, it's amazingly good. So anyway, look for the review of that coming soon. But I had this footage right here on my hard drive, so I thought I would show it to you. Anyway, that's that Runcam Eagle. BL Heli Suite as a Chrome app, asks Fried Rice FPV. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Very nice to have that as a Chrome app, especially for people who don't use Windows. And one of the things that the BL Heli Suite Chrome app gives you is that you can flash multi-shot having to um, without having to download any weird firmware. It has multi-shot built in. So yeah, so that's nice. As long as they got the bugs worked out of it, either go for it. Uh, yeah, Mr. Pink is reminding me, and I actually spoke to Lance today. Lance Wallen, the guy I've done some interviews with, he's reminding me that Steam Monkey is having a sale. He's closing his store. I know his store just opened a month ago. Well, he announced on the Rotor Riot group. He made a post to his own webpage or to his own Facebook page, and then he posted it to the Rotor Riot page, and basically said he's working on a top secret project, and as part of working on the top secret project, he has to close the store. So let's see if I can just find his store. SteamMonkey.com is basically like, well, I don't know if you can see it, but hang on. No. He's basically he's having a big sale. He posted it, and I don't see any sign on his webpage of the sale. So that must mean he's keeping it on the down low. So if you want to, he's basically liquidating his old inventory and closing the store. And that's not a bad thing. It's not like he's going out of business. He's gotten involved with another project that is, I don't know, I don't know anything about it. He's gotten involved with another project, and as a result of that project, he has to close the store. So hopefully it's a good thing. But if you want any really amazing deals, he's liquidating his inventory. Go check it out. He needs to sell. Basically, everything must go. Everything must go. Right? Okay. So yeah, definitely check that out. Brandon Brown, can I do a detailed video on how to flash the open logger? You guys, I got to tell you, if you ever want me to make a video, check my channel. I probably already made it, and I have already made this one. So if we go to, let's see if I can find the right keywords though. How to flash Blackbox firmware to open log. There you go. I'm going to paste it into the chat window for you. Bingo. There it is. Just you have to post it to the Blackbox log video responses thread that I'm going to be going through. That's where I keep my queue. Adamon, can I dig into my Rates Expo and Super Expo in Betaflight 3.0? Well, I mean, I can show you what I've got. I'm not going to go grab a copter, but I can show you. Yeah, here we go. I can show you my setup. Here's my setup right here. Where are the PIDs? I'm not using default PIDs. That's interesting. This is a diff, but where are the PIDs? That's interesting. That shouldn't be like that. Huh. Well, I don't know why my PIDs aren't there. That's really strange. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I just I have rates that I use and have used forever. And I tweak them a little bit every now and then, but I tune, I use S rates, I use Super Expo rates, and I use the S rates as to tune the full stick deflection speed, and I use the RC rate to tune the center stick feel, and that's just I just go for what I like. Yeah, Robert, that you do that after that, Robert, is in the setup video. That OpenLog video is about how to flash the firmware. So the OpenLog device comes with OpenLog firmware on it, but in order to get 250 kbaud, you need the Blackbox firmware. And so that video I showed you is how to flash the OpenLog firmware. Okay, this is, I hope, again, it's always a little touch and go when searching for Blackbox. No. Ah, come on. There we go. How to configure Blackbox on CleanFlight Betaflight. So that's the one that tells you how to configure it. Although you might be right. I might not say in there. I think you're probably right, actually. I don't tell you to change the config file in there either. So, okay, so you got me there. You're right. Yeah, you have to go into the config file on the SD card and change the baud rate to 250000. So there you go. Doug Schaefer, I have a video coming out about D-Shot soon. I should recorded it today. It's just me talking for 4 minutes. It's not a complicated video. So you'll see that in the next week or so. D-Shot is very, very exciting. I'm looking forward to it. It's not just hype, I think. So if you want to submit a Blackbox log, search for Blackbox log video responses. That's the name of the thread. You can find it on RC groups or here. There you go. You can post it there. Read the first post before you submit, please. Detroit FPV, which F4 board do I prefer or recommend? I do not have a preference or recommendation because I haven't flown enough of them to really form an opinion. I will tell you this, though. Many F4 boards do not have telemetry inversion built in. Something about the UART on the F4 boards, they don't do software inversion the way F3 boards do. So the designer of the board has to put a hardware inverter on there to do telemetry inversion, just like the Naze Rev 6 did. I would look for an F4 board that has telemetry inversion, that has, obviously it has to do S-Bus. I would want an SD card on board. And then many of them have weird things, like some of them, the buzzer, you can't do a buzzer. You have to do a little circuit with a transistor to make the buzzer work. And there are some boards that just, the designer of the board has taken care of all those little quirks for you. And that's what I would look for, is the convenience shop features like that. Okay. All in RC Flyer, very interesting that you asked that about all-in-one FCs. I just so happen to be working on this. Oh, look at that. I'm making an all-in-one flight controller roundup. Coming soon. Yes. Those are the ones that caught my eyes so far. There are a few others. I want to make sure. So there's the Omnibus, of course. Omnibus F3. There's the Omnibus F3 Pro, and there's the Omnibus F4. These are some that have caught my eye. Another one that's coming that's interesting is the Kakute from, I think that's from, oh dang it, holy bro. Nope, still didn't get it. Holy bro, the Kakute. The Kakute, does that have a, yeah, that's an all-in-one. Check that out. Oh, that's not a very big image. Oops. Where's the freaking page? Hold on. Yeah, so there's the Kakute from Holy Bro. That's a very new one. I'll be looking. I actually have one of those coming soon, and that's interesting. And then another one. There's one from Flying Lemon. It's the Kiwi. That is interesting. This one is interesting. It actually has a PDB that comes with it that has the current sensor on board. So it's two pieces, PDB and OSD. And I think it has an OSD, doesn't it? I'm sure it does, or I wouldn't. Yeah, it's got a Betaflight OSD. So we've got all these boards coming out with Betaflight compatible OSD. Very exciting. These are all some that have caught my eye recently. And by the way, with the Betaflight OSD, I heard that there is a pull request to let regular MinimOSD style OSDs, you know, the kind that talk via MSP over the UART, to let them interface with Betaflight via the Betaflight configurator. And if that goes through, that's going to really close the gap for some of these. So that's very exciting. Robert Baltrish asks, is X-Racer going to release an F4 board? I know a thing or two about what FPV model is doing, but I'm not sure what I can and can't say, so I'm not going to say anything specific. I can tell you, though, that I also have noticed that they released the F3, the V3.1, and then what happened is the main guy at FPV Model has recently moved back to the States. He was living in somewhere in China, I think. somewhere in Asia, and he moved back to the States, and and there've been some stuff going on with that and development. And I also noticed that they haven't released, like many people are releasing an F4 board, and they haven't released it. And I actually pinged him just yesterday to say, hey, what's up? How's it going? Haven't heard from you in a while. You got anything coming in the pipeline? Because and he said, yes, there's stuff they're working on. But I also agree, Robert. I've noticed that there's been a gap with FPV models development. They haven't really put anything out, and there's kind of been a little bit of a gap. And I'm sure there are reasons for that, but they haven't just dropped off the map. They're still out there. They're still doing development. Products are coming, but we don't have anything specific right now. Would I weigh in on the Revolt? I have nothing to say about the Revolt. I do have one. I got mine in the mail just a couple days ago. I will be putting it in a build, and I will be flying it, and we'll see how it flies and what I have to say. I got nothing to say about it until I fly it, and knowing my schedule, I will not be flying it for quite a while. It'll probably be a month before I fly it. The other thing, where is it? Oh, it's over there. Hold on. Close that. I don't need that. The other thing, look what I got in the mail today. It's a unicorn, you guys. Look, it's a 2 pineapples diversity module for your fat sharks. Oh, it does exist. It is an actual thing. Oh, so if you want to get one of these, what you have to do is, number one, start your own YouTube channel. Okay? Start your own YouTube channel, and then when you get to about 15,000, 16,000 subscribers, ask for one and they'll send you one. That's the only way to get it. I think. Anyway, I did get one, and I'm looking forward to testing that out. It actually has been sitting at my post office since the 20th, and I somehow I just only got the little slip recently, but I did finally get it. So yeah. Here's what I have to say about clone boards. Okay, clone things. If there's any way that you can support the manufacturers who make these things, you should do it. Okay, and I've become more aware of that as I've gotten into the industry through my YouTube channel, and I've met these people. I mean, I haven't met many of them in person. I really haven't met any of them at all in person, but I meet them on the internet in the context of, talking about product for the channel. Sometimes I get product and they ask me questions about product they're developing, et cetera, et cetera. And they become real people to me. So people like Nathan Soy, who is the developer of the Omnibus, people like Jason at FPV Model, these are, and many other people whose names aren't coming to me right now. They stop being just a product that I swipe my credit card and I get something in the mail. And that's changed my perspective. But I've always felt this way, even since before I got into the industry, that if you can support these people, you really should, because it takes a lot of work to be the first one to develop a new product. Even if the product is, some have argued, well, this isn't anything new. It's just an iteration on something that, it's a lot of work to develop a product like this. And it takes time and it takes money. And without these people, the clones wouldn't be there, okay? Because you can't clone something that doesn't exist. And so if you can support them, do support them. But I also understand, and I've been there, when you have only so much money to spend on the hobby and you got to get in the air. And $22 for a clone versus $35 or $40 for the original. Sometimes you buy the clone, and I appreciate that. And I'm never going to shake my finger at you and go, oh, don't buy clones, don't buy clones. But yeah, if you can, realize that there is a person out there who's trying to make a living at this. And this is a very, very hard company, a very hard business to make a living at. And they're trying to do it and scrape together and do this full time. And if you can support them, they probably deserve your money. So that's what I say about clones. But I mean, people are going to buy clones, and I'm not going to pretend clones don't exist. Okay. All right. Let's there's some questions and some discussion. Let's go ahead and do the first Blackbox log. The first one is from, but yeah, Borg. Okay, so hang on. Borgquad says, I support them when they aren't overcharging, but who are we to? I mean, you decide where you want to spend your money, but if you And board quads, if you run a business and you're saying they're overcharging from a position of actually knowing what you're talking about, then I'm not talking to you. But many people say, "Oh, that product is so overpriced, man," and that you just have no perspective on what the back end costs of running a business are and supporting product. When you send out product and it's got a defect and you have to do a recall, that costs a lot of money, right? Or you have to make good on something that's defective and you're having to replace it. When you have to do customer support, when you have to pay rent, all of that stuff. And so you see something and it comes out of China for $20 and it comes out of the US for $40 and you go, "Oh, that's overcharging." And that money's not going just in somebody's pocket. That's going somewhere. So, yeah, anyway. Yeah, there you go. Okay. Now, let's do logs. The first one is, and I should do that clever thing I do where oh, yeah, come on. I should do that clever thing I do where I mark down the timestamps. And so I don't have to go back and do it all again. Okay. Okay. Mr. Mike, that is an RC Explorer tricopter baby tribe on my wall. And thank you to Robert Baltrish for lending it to me. I got to fly it a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and do the Blackbox log right now. Norwenkel asks, my open log Blackbox device is connected to UART3 on my F3FC. That is the F3FC is the tricopter flight controller from RC Explorer, who makes the baby tricopter. Serial is set up to 250K baud. Blackbox rate is 1. Blackbox rate denom is 2. So I'm going to guess that you're logging. I'm going to guess that you're at a rate of either maybe 500 hertz or maybe 1 kilohertz. X4R SB is connected to UART1, smart port to UART2. I checked, by the way, when I saw that the X4R SB was connected to UART1, I said, well, are you sure that's not conflicting with your USB? And no, the F3FC uses a virtual COM port, so it does not conflict. The USB port does not conflict with UART1, so we're fine there. Telemetry looks fine on the Tyrannus, but we see the voltage reading is 8S instead of 3S, and if you look at the gyro data and the tri-picture, it's all flipping all over the place. So, what mistake have I made? What I did when I saw this was, and I actually prepared before this broadcast. I downloaded all the files beforehand so I could be ready to go. Isn't that who am I? How could I have done that? What I did when you said that, you say that the voltage is wrong and the gyro data looks wrong. So I'm going to open this up in a text editor, not in in Blackbox Log Explorer. And if you look at a Blackbox log in a text editor, you will see that at the beginning is this header information. And if we open up another Blackbox log from somebody else, which thankfully I have lots of them, you'll see that the header goes on and on and on, and we actually get a dump of the whole. We get a dump here of the entire whatever the config dump, and then it says end of log null, and then there's even more stuff here. There's data, etc. But if we look at your file, do you see that we never get to end of log null? Here, the header is here, and then it goes to garbage. And all of these nulls here, this looks like, actually, again, let's go back to the other log file. Do you see what the data looks like? I don't know. Let's find some of the data. There's the data looks like. So that's what the data looks like in the Blackbox file when it's opened up in Notepad. But here we can see that we never get to the end of the header. So what I will say is that something is corrupting your data. You should always have the header correct, at least. Even if, it's strange though, because if your baud rate was wrong, Like if your serial was at 250K baud, but your black box log was at 115200K baud, then you would get just 100% garbage. So your serial is correct, but somehow the data being put out to the open log is getting corrupted. So, and it's getting corrupted really early in the process. That's the strange thing. It's normal if you're trying to log at a very high rate to see you get corrupted data because you saturate the UART. But in this case, you didn't even finish writing the header and you got some corruption. So I think you've got a bad connection somehow, maybe a bad wire. It wouldn't be the power wire, because if the logger had powered down, then you would have had a new log file. The log file would have just ended. So your power is fine, but I think your data is wrong. The baud rate is correct because we can see the characters coming in, but then suddenly they stop, and it makes me think that the other thing I could think of is that if your controller goes to 100% CPU utilization, it will interrupt the black box process. But man, it would have had to do that like microseconds after you armed, so that's a little weird. So I don't know what exactly you've done incorrectly, but I believe your configuration in your flight controller is correct, because we can see that the data starts to be dumped out, right? We can see it there. This that we see here is absolutely correct. It's just that then as you get to this line, suddenly it just all, I'm not sure whether it turns to garbage or whether it just got cut off here and interrupted and then picked up in the middle. But something is interrupting the output of data between your flight controller and your OpenLog device, and that's what you need to look into. Okay, that's going to be it for that. We'll move on to the next one, 2329. Tommy Pizzino, before you buy and build one of those baby tricopters, you should maybe ask Robert Baltrish. Robert, I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but if you feel like talking about it, you're welcome to talk in the chat about your experiences with it. I will say, this was sent to me and built by Robert. It's very well built. So Robert's a heck of a builder, and he did some of the setup, but he was not able to complete the setup. There's things you have to do with the tricopter to tune the tail to get it to handle correctly, and it isn't finished being tuned. And when I flew it, even on a sort of a smooth, straight flight, the tail would waggle back and forth, and I don't know. Robert can talk more if he wants to in the chat about his experience with trying to get it to fly right. Yeah. Anyway, it's a cute little copter, though. No doubt about that. Here is here's MR2 Mark II, and he did confirm in the last on the forum thread that is in fact a reference to the car. So this is MR2 Mark II. He's seeing oscillation during low power descents. The longer the fall, the more it builds, becoming unstable until I give it throttle to arrest the descent. Now this is interesting. As I think about the kinds of problems, handling problems that a copter can have, it's interesting because some of them will sort of cascade and build on themselves like a feedback loop, like feedback in an auditorium where it starts small and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, bigger, bigger. And some of them just stay static at the same level. And so I don't have a sort of an answer for you, but it is interesting you say that it builds and it builds and it builds, and it suggests some kind of a feedback loop like that. In general, the D term is very susceptible to feedback loops like that, and so is the P term, but not the I term. I don't know what that means, but it is certainly something to think about as we go into the analysis. Let's go ahead. Yeah, oscillation during low power descents. Low power descent is probably prop wash. So as we think about prop wash, we're probably thinking about the D term. And we'll go ahead and we'll open this up. This is number 2329. We'll open up Blackbox Explorer. And we'll look at 2329. run 2 of 5 for the step response test and run 4 of 5 for flight. So let's look at run 2 of 5. Raj, look at my playlist, Practical PID Tuning. That's where I would suggest a beginner start learning to tune. Yep. Peter, I would say if you have to change the offset that much, I'm surprised that you have to do that. It depends on how your current, like when you look at a current sensor, the specs for the current sensor will say that it outputs 300 millivolts at 0 amps, for example, and that would be your offset. That an offset that high, though, I'm surprised. That's a pretty large number. It makes me wonder if something else is up. Let's start by looking at your gyros, as usual. Remove graph. And we'll zoom out, and we'll turn smoothing off by pressing the S key. Smoothing is off. Well, that's suspiciously thin lines. Suspiciously thin lines. Do you see how thin these lines are? So thin. You know how I sound? You know who I sound like right now. These are the thinnest lines. They're so thin. You've never seen lines this thin. You're going to love these lines. These traces are the best traces. They're huge. Okay, I'm stopping. No politics. I couldn't resist, though. These lines are suspiciously thin. I've turned smoothing off, and yet they're so thin. It makes me think that there's a lot of filtering going on in here, and so in order to test that out, can I see your information? Yeah. So let's see where your filtering is at. Hardware filter is off. Gyrosoft filter is at 100. I'm really suspicious of that. That doesn't seem possible. Because there's just no copter that is that vibration free. I'm really suspicious of that. I don't know how that's possible. Especially, yeah, I'm really, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I have to take it at face value, but there's no way that this copter is that noise free. This has to be filtered. Here you've raised the throttle. I can see down here, this is the throttle. This blue line down here is the throttle. And you lower the throttle, you're falling. Here is some sort of prop wash oscillation as you raise the throttle, but I don't see any sort of oscillation as you fall. And here are some sort of throttle stabs. Let's zoom in here a little bit. And let's go ahead. So I have to take your gyros at face value, but I'm really suspicious of how clean they are. I've never seen a copter with lines that thin and that wasn't heavily filtered. You know, yeah, maybe if the flight controller is like heavily vibration isolated, if this really is what it looks like, then this is just such a clean copter. It's amazing. Anyway, let's take a look at the roll axis PIDs and see what we can see. Your sampling rate is really low. Do you see? Oh, that's it. Okay, got it. I got it. This is the second time this has happened. The first time I missed it, and y'all had to point it out to me. The second time I'm going to get it myself, though. Look at how jagged this line is. The sampling rate here is, yeah, the sample rate is 1/16. Okay, so let me take a minute and tell you some of you guys about a thing called the Nyquist-Shannon theorem, which, if you already know about it, prepare to be bored for 5 minutes. But the Nyquist-Shannon theorem is a really, really cool thing in information theory, which says that among other things, that the frequency that you can sample without error is 1/2 your sampling rate. So if you're sampling at 1 kilohertz, then you can correctly reconstruct and record frequencies up to half that, 500 hertz. And what that means is that the lower your sampling rate, the lower the frequencies that you'll record. And frequencies above that, and that limit is called the Nyquist limit. And the frequencies above the Nyquist limit are aliased down as artifacts at lower frequencies. And if you want to learn more about that, you can watch my video, Aliasing Primer for Multi-Rotor / Tuning Analysis, which goes into a lot more detail about this. But basically, if you're sampling at 500 hertz, 500 hertz is the highest you're going to capture. And if there's a signal at 501 hertz, it's going to show up as a 1 hertz signal. Everything above 500 hertz will be folded down to the lower frequencies. And so when we look here and we see these ultra-thin lines on the gyros, and I say this must be filtered, it's not being filtered by a soft filter in the flight controller. It's being filtered by the fact that you're sampling at 1/16. What's your loop time? Your loop time is 2 kilohertz. Hang on. Okay, why? What do you, how do you not start? There we go. 2,000 divided by 16, your sampling rate is 125 hertz. That means your Nyquist limit is 62 hertz, which means that we should see a really steep roll-off. If we look at the gyros, let me bring this up, we should see a really steep roll-off. No, come back. Where'd you go? Oh, bug. Come back. Yeah, see, look here. 6 hertz, 13 hertz, 19 hertz. There's nothing down below about 6 hertz, above about 6 hertz. Yeah, and here our Nyquist limit is 31 hertz, which is half of our how did I screw it up somehow? I must have screwed it up somehow, because we're seeing the Nyquist limit of 31 hertz. 2 kilohertz. Well, anyway, my point is that you've filtered this by your low sampling rate. The sampling rate of 1/16 and the effective sampling rate of whatever 125 microseconds. It's too slow. None of this data is useful for anything. You have to sample at close to 1 kilohertz, and the reason for that is that in a quadcopter, if you look at the spectral data, you have a peak of noise around 250 to 350, maybe 400 hertz from the props, and then above that, there's almost no actual energy. The higher frequencies, there's just nothing there. So you want your Nyquist limit to be around 400 or 500 hertz, which equates to a sampling rate of around 1 kilohertz. Well, 800 hertz to 1 kilohertz. If you're sampling slower than that, your data is less and less usable, and by the time you're sampling at 1/16, the data is completely unusable for any kind of analysis because it's been so filtered by your low sampling rate. So I'm sorry to say, MR2 Mark II, that I'm not able to really answer any questions about using these black box logs because they're so heavily sampled. You have to be sampling it at around 1 kilohertz. If you have a lot of breakup, if you have a lot of those little boxes that show that you're dropping frames, then you could drop to maybe 666 hertz, but definitely no lower for the data to be at all usable. Okay, so there we go. That's going to be it for that one. Kaiser Soze, have I talked about Betaflight 301 supposedly fixing gyro oscillations? I haven't. The thing with the gyro oscillations is they're so scattered that one guy said it fixed it, but there's 27 more people out there, and I don't know if it's fixed it for them, so I'm not even sure that that's a trend. You know what I mean? It would be nice if it did fix it. In the last, let's say, 4 months, there have been so many people who've been having I can't help it. I keep hearing myself sound like Trump. There have been so many people who've been telling me about mid-throttle oscillations. It's a huge problem. I gotta stop. So many people have been having mid-throttle oscillations, yaw oscillations, etc. And it's too big a problem to say it's just an isolated incident. Too many people are reporting it. The thing is, I don't know what causes it. There have been several things that have changed in the last, say, 6 months in the market, and it's a fast-moving market. There are always things that are changing. One is that BLHeli S came out. One is that we've had a lot of motors with much more powerful motors, high torque magnets, high powered magnets, etc. And another is that Betaflight 3.0 has come out and it's done some different things with the filtering. And who knows which, if any of those things or all of them, is the cause. It would be great if Betaflight 301 fixed it though, because it's such a big thing. And I've never had this problem, and many people have never had the problem. So, but if you know, if 5% of the people are having the problem, that's still a lot of people, and it's really too many. So, that's a shame. I hope it fixes it. Can the port for OpenLog do 1 kilohertz? Yes, absolutely. If you have your accelerometer turned off, at least on Betaflight 2.9, at 250 kbaud, you could log at 1 kilohertz. Absolutely. Absolutely. Robert, there is no way to monitor CPU usage in flight that I know of, except if you have a Betaflight OSD. So that's the Omnibus, the Siren, or any of the, I think the Kakute is a Betaflight. If you have any of the boards that are the onboard Betaflight OSD, it supports CPU utilization as an OSD, entity. So you can put it on screen and watch it. That's the only way I know of. I wish that OpenLog logged the CPU utilization, but I don't think so. All right, I'm gonna stop. People are gonna start talking about politics, and I really just don't want to go there. You know, we have such a nice live stream, so polite. Let's just not go there. I keep hearing it. I keep hearing myself doing an impression without meaning to. I don't know why. Um, okay. Yeah. No. Yeah. It's not a big deal, but now we're gonna go to 2342. Okay. And we're going to take a look at Vaflius. He's having a problem with a new drone, Eachine Wizard X220. How is the Eachine Wizard? Anybody out there have one in the chat? People, they tried to send me an Eachine Wizard. After my review of the Eachine Falcon, they said, hey, do you want to try the Wizard? And the problem, I can't remember why I turned it down. I think it was that it came with a naze. Maybe it was that it came with a naze and it didn't have an option for an F3 board. I don't remember. I think it was that it was a naze 32 Rev 6, and I was just like, no, sorry. You know, the Falcon was such a mixed bag of disappointment that I just didn't feel like taking on another Eachine project unless it was going to be a Rockstar. And since it didn't strike me as a Rockstar, I just turned it down. So there you go, people who feel like I've sold out. I turned down a copter because I thought it was too similar to one I already reviewed and wasn't worth your time, even though it would have been a free copter. So there you go. I haven't quite sold out yet. Anyone who wants to pay me to sell out, there is a number. There's a number. If you're out there and you want to know what the number is, just start putting zeros after something. Eventually, I will sell out. I think we all know that we have that number, but not yet. It hasn't been met yet. Let's see. Oscillation on roll and pitch axis when the throttle is between 1500 and 1600. So mid-throttle oscillation is another one of those things that's very, very hard to solve just by looking at black boxes. It is almost always a frame resonance, in my experience. And here's why I say that. If the oscillations get worse as the throttle goes up, that makes sense. The motors are spinning faster, the props are spinning with more energy, you get more oscillations, right? That makes sense. But a mid-throttle oscillation that goes away as you raise the throttle, that's always going to be some kind of a harmonic resonance, a standing wave, if you will, on the frame. And unfortunately, it's only really trial and error that it's going to help you find that. You got to look for loose bolts on the frame. You got to look for a cracked plate, perhaps. All of that stuff. Also, look at your camera, because if your board is loose, if your lens is loose, if the camera mount is loose in some way, all of that stuff, you can get that perfect frequency where the camera resonates, and then as you raise the throttle, you're out of that sweet spot, and you don't get it anymore. But the good news is that mid-throttle oscillation is almost never going to be a tuning issue, because, I mean, sometimes changing your tune will affect it, perhaps. For example, changing your D gain may cause the PID loop to feed back less into and amplify the oscillation less. But almost always, if you've got mid-throttle oscillation, in my opinion, it's going to be a physical thing about your frame or your camera or something like that that you need to look for. Especially if you say that the issue happens in the motor tab. If anything happens in the motor tab, it cannot have anything to do with the PID loop, because the PID loop is not active when you're using the motors tab, okay? So you have a physical characteristic of your copter, something about the frame, a bolt is loose, or the frame itself perhaps is just badly designed, I just don't know, but that's what you got to look for. I would definitely check the camera, check the frame for loose screws or cracked plates, and that's the kind of thing I would look for. If you have moments of losing control when flying, my guess is the first thing I would check is, do you have air mode active? If you don't have the first time I flew a copter with air mode turned off, after having gotten used to flying with air mode, I dropped the throttle in a sharp turn and the copter started to tumble, and I was like, whoa, what's going on with my PIDs? But it was just that air mode was off. If you're not using air mode, you could have just lowered the throttle and the copter is tumbling. So that may be it. You're not going to fix that problem with too little eye gains, though. That's the wrong direction to go. The copter's sort of losing control and losing access to the, if not responding to the sticks. That's not a tuning thing. So anyway, there you go. I'm going to take a look at your logs, but my general advice, I don't think we're going to solve your problem just by looking at your logs. Josh Store, the Racer Star ESCs are quite good. They are essentially, I've been told they're off the same production line as the Cicada ESCs, the Racer Star Bielheli SESCs. I've been told they're basically the exact, not just a clone, but literally the exact same ESC as the Cicada. I don't know if that's true. Based on the quality of the Racer Star ESCs, I would be inclined to trust the Racer Star motors, but the first thing I would do is I would go look on miniquadtestbench.com and I would see if Quad McFly has tested that motor. I vaguely recall seeing that he did, although I could be wrong about that. So let's see about your PIDs. First, let's look at your gyros. So you've got something going on here. Is that after raising throttle after a low throttle descent? So we've got some prop wash oscillation there, I guess. That is a pretty sharp oscillation. If we go to 100% here, that is a pretty sharp oscillation. Look how thin this peak is. It goes up and down very quickly. It's a pretty sharp oscillation on pitch. And if we look at the motors, do you see how the, oh wow, yeah. Yeah, look how the motors are kind of going, they're jumping. We used to call them angry Pac-Mans because it looked like a Pac-Man mouth going waka 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 waka, right? They're going all over the place. That suggests D-gains that are too high. It's tricky though because, you know, depending on how this copter is set up, you may have to really push the PIDs to get a good tune out of it. The D-gain, the D term is pretty active. We see a lot of these sharp little back and forths. The thinner these little peaks are, the higher the frequency is and the sharper it is, and your motors are going to start getting hot. But I've seen too many traces where the D term looked horrible, but the copter was flying great. I don't trust myself to judge the D term in Blackbox unless it is just gratuitously over the top bad. So I wouldn't conclude that this was a problem. That's starting to get really active. I wouldn't conclude that it's a problem, though, unless I saw some signs that it was excessive in terms of flight characteristics. It's really funny. If you were to go back, say, a year ago, I was tuning primarily based on Blackbox logs. And as Betaflight has advanced over the years, it's almost gotten to the point where the Blackbox logs, Betaflight can make so much silk out of such a sow's ear, if you will. The tune can be objectively bad and the copter can fly so good. And you look at the Blackbox and it just looks like a mess. And yet the copter is flying so good to the point where I almost trust Blackbox less than I used to, and I primarily do most of my tuning these days. Oh, yeah, see, this is a problem. I do most of my tuning these days without looking at Blackbox quite as much as I used to. But this, do you see how right here the D term is just constantly going bonkers? That strikes me as a problem. Is it that you raise the throttle? Was that the mid-throttle oscillation? You are in the range, and then it goes away as you raise it. There's your mid-throttle oscillation. I found it. So the question here then becomes, is the D term causing this, or is it responding to it? It's a chicken and the egg problem. The D term will amplify vibration that's already there. So if you have vibration being caused by frame resonance and the D gain is there, then the oscillations will get worse and the D term will flip out. But you don't know if the D term is causing the problem or not. Here's how you solve that. Lower your D gain to 0. If you still see the vibrations, then the D term is not causing the problem, it's responding to them. Because when the D gain is 0, then the D term can't do anything. So if you lower the D gain to 0 and you still see the oscillations, then you know that it's really it's a mechanical issue. It really still has to be a mechanical issue. And what we're seeing here is the D term responding to those oscillations and amplifying them, because there's just nothing, there's no way that you would get mid-throttle oscillations except with frame resonance. So I would say my advice still stands, but if you're getting issues like hot motors, you can lower your D gain, or we could try a little bit of filtering here. So if we look at the gyro, now this is the filtered gyro, so this actually isn't perfect. We'd really want the unfiltered data. But if we bring this up, no, I can't even see a peak. I can't even see a peak because it's so heavily filtered. We really need the unfiltered gyro data. Maybe if I look at the D term, I can see it. Yeah. But no, not really. Oh, that's interesting. I don't know. Yeah, you would really need to go through the steps for tuning. Maybe you could fix this by using a notch filter to cut the noise out. And I have a video on how to tune a notch filter. Maybe that would be a direction to go. But I think you really got to check out the mechanical characteristics of your copters. Ergot FPV asks about the Siren FPV. I think it's very exciting. If I'm going to do a build with it, they sent me one over a month ago, and it takes me so long to work through stuff. It's like literally next on my bench though is I'm going to build out the copter with the Siren in it. If you look at my roundup spreadsheet, by the way, this is preliminary. I just started working on this like 2 days ago. This information may not be correct, to take it with a grain of salt. But if you look at here you can see the Siren FPV. It's an F3 board, so fine. That's par for the course these days. It has 6 motor outputs. That's very nice. I have a friend who accidentally lifted a motor pad on his Combini. Combini only has 4 motor outputs. He was screwed. The board was done. If he had 6 motor outputs, he could have used motor mixing, and he could have kept the board in service. Very nice. Has a 200 milliwatt or 25 milliwatt video transmitter with a Betaflight OSD. It does not have current monitoring or current sensor. So that's a downside for me. Why do you want an OSD but not have current monitoring? What are you thinking? So I asked the guys about this, and they said what they can do is they could build a custom firmware for it that has current sensing and RSSI instead of UART2. So like the UART2 TX pin becomes current and UART2 RX pin becomes RSSI. That's something they could do. So in theory, by jumping through some hoops, you could get an external current sensor working with the Siren. I'm disappointed that that's not a built-in thing, but at the end of the day, they only had so many pins on the board to work with, and they chose not to include a current sensor. I don't understand how you release an OSD without a current sensor, but that's just me. Many people don't feel that way. It's got an SD card on board, very nice, and it's got the 6500 gyro, which is also, it's unfortunate, but not an absolute deal breaker. So how many other flight controllers are there out there with a built-in video transmitter? I'll wait for you to respond in the chat, and I'll keep going. There aren't very many. And so if you're trying to do an ultra compact build, like a racer, like a Pure X racer or something like that, having this, you combine this with a 4-in-1 ESC, and that's your entire build done. Well, that's got a lot going for it, doesn't it? Yeah, so that's what I think about the Siren. But the flip side is the Siren is $100. Whew. So okay, the guys on the Siren webpage argue that you would pay more than that for all of the stuff you would put on there anyway. But they make some generous assumptions about price. If you're the kind of person who would buy a $40 video transmitter and and a $40 OSD, or eventually it adds up and you're over $100 and then the Siren is cheaper. But if you're on a budget, then this really isn't the one for you. So yeah, that's what I think about the Siren. The Siren does have the Betaflight OSD, which is super exciting. That's the one that you can access from within the Betaflight GUI. So Peter Wu says Diatone makes one. Peter, I wish you could post the link in. What's the name of it, Peter? Diatone OSD flight controller. Let's see if that gets it. And then Drones Good Me Bad says, what happens if the VTX blows? Got to spend another $100. Yes, technically, if you are a good solderer, you can desolder that module and replace that module. You can do it. It is possible. So if you blow the VTX, then you see these solder points right here. You could just desolder it, lift it off, and solder the new module on. Many people would not be able to do that, though. So yeah, that is an issue. You're going to want to be really careful not to smoke this board. And God forbid it has some kind of a manufacturing defect. And I mean, I don't know how many of these there are out in the field, but if it did turn out to have a manufacturing defect and it was like dying at an abnormally high rate, God forbid the USB port comes off, right? Right? Then you're really in trouble. Although notice they did I just picked that as an example. They did use the good USB port with the full through-hole soldering, so that's nice. Board quads, no Spectrum support. It absolutely does support Spectrum, obviously, just by using any UART. Does it have a 3.3 volt out? You could make a liar of me if it doesn't have a 3.3. Yeah. See, look here. Here's a 5 volt and a 3 volt jumper. And when you jumper that, the output on the UART becomes either 5 volt or 3 volt. It's labeled 5 volt, but it's not. Two of the UARTs are selectable, either 5 volt or 3 volt, and you use this jumper to pick it. So it absolutely does support Spectrum. It just doesn't have the little micro connector plug. So, oh my gosh, you have to cut off a connector and you have to solder a couple wires. Okay, I wish people wouldn't say that it doesn't support Spectrum just because it doesn't have the header. If it has 3.3 volt out and it has a serial port, it supports Spectrum. So, the 6500 gyro though, yeah, I got nothing. I don't have nothing to say about that. Maybe it's this one. No, we want the one with the video transmitter on it, right? What's the diatone? And then impulse singularity. Oh, thank you for that. I mentioned the singularity once a long time ago. Let me add that to my spreadsheet real quick. I mentioned that once a long time ago, and I didn't really take a close look at it. It's certainly worth a look. It's a little bit dated, honestly. It's been around, gosh, it was in my first flight controller roundup, I think. Maybe my second one. I think my first one. Does it have an OSD? I don't think it has an OSD. That's the thing. No. No. It doesn't have an OSD. See, that's not an all-in-one. It's missing an OSD. So that's why it would not be included in this roundup. Yeah. And by the way, that's why also I'm not, as much as I would like to include the Combini. So the Combini does not have an OSD, but it's not released yet. There is a stackable board that has an OSD and VTX. And in a way, that's kind of like ideal, because then if you blow the video transmitter, you just replace the board. But that board is not released yet, and I'm not sure when it will be released, and I'm not going to put an unreleased product in my roundup on the promise that someday it'll come out. So. Yeah. Okay, let's continue. We've looked at this one, and now we're going to go on to 2354. Yeah, Aaron, I think for me, VTX plus OSD on the same board but separate from the flight controller is nice from the perspective of modularity. but usually that means that the PDB and the flight controller are combined, and I kind of don't like that. I don't like the noise, the electrical noise being on there, although a good designer will be able to take care of that. But the other thing is that the soldering to the PDB is so like you have big wires and lots of solder and big pads, and that's a place where people are most likely to make a mistake. And if you make a mistake on a $15 PDB, it's no big deal. But if you make a mistake on a $50 flight controller, it is a big deal. So I really do like the way that it's been done, forever on my builds, which is the Red Rotor ROSD plus PDB, OSD and PDB together. Current sensor is taken care of, and then you have the flight controller separate. That doesn't solve the problem of the VTX though. So it's kind of like you can't have it. You can't have everything all at once, I guess. Yeah, so far no one has released a single board that has a video transmitter, OSD, PDB, and flight controller all in one. And I'm not even sure I would want them to if they did. There is a... Let me see if I've remembered the name right. This is something that you're going to see on my channel soon, I hope. I think you are. And this copter is... Okay, so it's a copter, but what's most interesting about it is, check this out. Have you seen this before? I'll bet many of you haven't. It's a three-way stack with a 4-in-1 ESC, a flight controller, and a transmitter and OSD. Hey, hang on. This is pretty exciting. This looks actually like it could be. And I don't know this. I haven't tested this product yet, so take this with a grain of salt. But on paper, this looks like the perfect combination of integration and modularity. Your ESCs and your PDB are on one board, your flight controller's on another, your transmitter and your OSD are on another. Isn't that a great sort of smart way of breaking things out? And if any one thing breaks, you can replace it. And you still have a 4-in-1 ESC, so if you smoke one ESC, you got to replace all four, which kind of sucks. But you haven't smoked your flight controller and you haven't smoked your video transmitter. Very nice. Very nice. This product, I believe, is available. I don't actually even know the name of the product. It's available separately from this copter. I saw it first on its own. I wish I could find the name for it for you. It's from a French company, and I'm sorry to say I don't know the name of this product. But this product, I think, if it's the same product I'm thinking of, it doesn't just come from with the Jaguar. Maybe it's by FlyPro. Anyway, that's exciting. Isn't that exciting? That's very nice. Okay, let me mark the time real quick. And we'll start with Symowallo. Symowallo says, thanks many advance for any help you can provide. I haven't been able to sync. I've just posted the logs. Okay. Nice 32 Rev 5, Beta Flight 3.0. Fine. 1 kilohertz loop time. Yes, that's about the best you're going to get from Beta Flight 3.0 on a Rev 5. No problem, though. The motor's cut out when I drop back to low throttle and then throttle up. So my first thought here is min throttle is too low and the motor is stopping when you lower the throttle. Failsafe is a good guess, but the fact that it usually happens when you drop the throttle sort of points us away from failsafe. I see what you said there, Ergot. That's I'm not touching that, but that's funny. Yeah, the throttle dependence suggests that it's not failsafe, but failsafe is a good guess. Timing is you're thinking by changing timing that it may be a desync issue, but desync is proper desyncs are really unlikely these days. With the common motors we've gotten with BL Heli or BL Heli S, and you have BL Heli ESCs. Min throttle of 1080 is probably not too low, but it does depend on where you've calibrated to. Let's take a look at your videos first. The 27-second mark. Thank you for your timestamp. Oh, we'll just, that's DVR. We'll just turn the sound off real quick, but let's turn this up. 27-second mark, so. No, I'm not even sure I caught it. Do we have? No, there's no usable sound. Well, that's interesting. Let's see if I can see another one after this. It's interesting how the copter kind of... It looks like the motor came back because the copter kind of tipped and then it stopped tipping and stabilized, but it was too late and he was crashing. I agree, 1080 could be too low, but Peter, you can't run higher on a NAS because the CPU can't run fast enough. Betaflight 3.0 is so processor intensive that the processor just can't go fast enough to run any higher loop times than that. That's all. The 4-second mark, okay. Very quick. Get right to the... Oh, this isn't the same one, no. See, and you recovered that time. So the way that the copter is freezing and holding does look to me like a failsafe. When you lose a motor, the copter will either spin like crazy, or if you lose all the motors, it will tumble slowly, but it will not hold its attitude. You see what I mean? So let's watch it again. You got it in slow-mo for us. See, we're rolling to the left and we're yawing to the left here, and then at some point we get some breakup. There. The copter is now not rolling or yawing or pitching. And that is consistent with a failsafe. Now we're back. That is consistent with the failsafe because the default behavior on failsafe is to center the channels. Yeah, so it is starting to look like a failsafe. And on failsafe, the throttle goes to 0 by default. A failsafe is one of the easiest things to find, though. This is number 2354. Easy. We got a ton of logs here. You guys, let me just make a note to anybody who's watching and anybody who's in the live stream. If you do submit me something, I appreciate the enthusiasm of sending me a bunch of data. But if you send me like 20 files, like I'm not going to look at them all. I just don't have time. No offense. So, you know, I love the fact that you've documented everything and you've given me timestamps. That's all great. And there's just no way I'm going to go through all these files. So as you make submissions, the best thing you can do is you can hone it down to like 1 or 2 or 3 maybe specific examples. Sending me more than that is a lot of work for you, and it's kind of not. It's a kind of a waste of your time, unless you just really like doing it. So anyway, but let's have a look at. Here's Crash 2 at 11:50 a.m. And what I'm going to do here, is I'm going to go to the graph setup, and I'm going to do a custom graph, and we're going to choose the field RX signal received, RX flight channels valid. I should really do this as a macro. And failsafe phase. And I'm going to zoom all the way out. And I'm going to look for any of those to change. Here we go. Nope. At no point did we lose a signal. At no point do we have a failsafe. Now let's just make sure that... Nope. See, 0 all the way through. Oh, hang on. What's this? What's this? That's not at 0. What's going on there? RX flight channel's valid. Hang on. Flight channel's valid is 1, but then it goes to 0. Where does it go to? Why is that one different? Let's check out our gyros. Is this the one with a crash? That's very strange. Clearly the signal, clearly everything's working here. You drop the throttle. No, they all go to center. Yeah, so you're clearly in failsafe here. And then here's your crash. The gyro goes bonkers on your crash. You're clearly in failsafe there because your sticks freeze and center and you go to min throttle 1070. And RX signal received and RX flight channels valid go to 0. Okay, let's check out one more example. There. Yep. RX signal received goes to 0. And then flight channels valid goes to 0. Okay, so you're having fail safes. Okay? You're having fail safes. That's what's happening. And once we look, I said initially that it didn't look like a failsafe, but the throttle dependency didn't seem like a failsafe, but I don't think there's any throttle dependency at all. I think that's got to be a coincidence. The key thing that made me start thinking it was a failsafe is the way the copter froze in the air. That indicates you centered your sticks, except you didn't center your sticks. That's what failsafe does when, by default, when it occurs. Now you may be wondering, why do we not see failsafe state or failsafe phase change? Failsafe phase is idle here, and if you watch, it stays idle through the end of the video. And I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think now come on, Dave. I used like 2 of them. I used 2 of them. No. Yeah, you got me there, Dave. Failsafe phase stays at idle. You would think it would go into failsafe. I think what that is by default you stay in stage 1 failsafe for, I think it's a full second. And I think it's only after you get out of stage 1 failsafe that you see failsafe phase change. So looking at failsafe phase alone will not tell you if you're having failsafes. You have to look at RX signal received and RX flight channels valid, and that will tell you if you're entering stage 1 failsafe. You enter stage 1 failsafe when RX signal received or RX flight channels valid goes false. Okay? So that's it. All right. So that's what's happening. You're having failsafes. What should you do to fix it? What is your transmitter? I don't see what your transmitter is. Or what's your receiver? Is your receiver here? No, you didn't tell me your receiver either. Okay, so if it is X4R, so you're using a Tyrannus. So I'm really then the question is, are you getting low RSSI warnings? You must have the volume turned up on the Tyrannus, or you won't hear it. You have to set a lot, set a special function to turn the volume up. But if you're getting any audible warnings, you should be hearing low RSSI warnings or telemetry lost. So it'll say RSSI critical, RSSI low, or telemetry lost. Any of those will indicate that you're having RF signal issues. You could check your antennas. Your antennas may be damaged or they may be incorrectly mounted to your copter. For example, some people tape their antennas underneath the arm of the copter. Putting an RF antenna up against an electrically conductive carbon fiber plate is not the way to get the best range. They get away with it because they're racers and they don't fly very far away from themselves. But in this case, that's not what you're doing. So you may have a damaged antenna. The antenna may be incorrectly mounted, or you may just simply be exceeding the range of what you can get away with. Your Tyrannus may have a damaged antenna. Anything's possible. If you are getting failsafes and you are not hearing telemetry warnings from the Tyrannus, then you have a problem between the receiver and the flight controller. The wire going from point A to point B is something's damaged. Your solder joint is bad, etc. So that is it. Yeah. So your receiver should always be set to no pulses. Your receiver should always be set to no pulses if possible. And since you're using an X series receiver, it can be set to no pulses. Just go in the Tyrannus and set it to no pulses in the Tyrannus. And the Tyrannus will actually, for the X series receivers, you can set failsafe in the Tyrannus and it will program the receiver correctly. And that's what you want. If the receiver was set to hold positions, then the copter would not freeze. It would continue to rotate. If the receiver was set to fixed positions, it would zero the channels, but that's not what you want. You want no pulses, and you want failsafe setup in the flight controller. Insert name here. We know that the flight controller saw the failsafe because we saw RX signal received go to 0. So we know that the flight controller knew that the failsafe had occurred. Okie dokie. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. That's one way to go about it, I guess. No, that's not what I meant to do. $23.56. In case you're wondering what notes I'm taking, after the, some of you already know this, after the live stream, I go back and I put in the video description timestamps to each of these logs. And normally I have to like literally watch the entire live stream again. Almost. I watch it at like double speed, but that still takes like an hour. And so what I'm doing now is I'm taking notes during the live stream of the timestamps where each of the logs are happening. Isn't that smart? It only took me like 3 months to think to do that. Oh, anyway. 2356. Abadonna is new to Blackbox, trying to tune the QAVR. I fly a QAVR. That's still my, I'm such a, I'm not into the new sexy wonderful goodness. I mean, I like doing that. I like building new sexy wonderful frames, and then I fly them for a while, and then I sell them usually, or I give them to people who, whatever. I don't keep them almost always. I'm not the kind of guy who wants to have 17 copters sitting in my closet that I never fly. I want someone else to have them and be flying them. So at the end of the day, I always just go back to my QAVR and fly it for freestyle. Is it the best? I don't know. It's just what I've had forever. It's like an old blanket. I love it. And I just go back and keep flying it. So QAVR forever. QAVR life. Yep. Can't get rid of oscillations when flying straight. Okay. It'd be nice if I knew more about your setup. Let's see. Oh no, here we go. That's what I wanted. You do have BL Heli S ESCs. Unfortunately, some people are having like oscillations when flying straight, and I don't know what the solution is. So I may not be able to help you, but I'll do my best. This is 2356, so we'll open up your log. There we go. And we'll open up your video. Thank you for video. Your video is not going to open. I need to transcode it. I'm going to forget to do that. So instead of trying to transcode it and then come back and forgetting, which I've done in the past, let's go ahead and take a look at your video, maybe outside the black box, and see what we can see. We're looking for oscillations when flying straight. How bad is it going to be? Well, your P gains look good from how sharp your flip stops are. I see the kind of vibration. Yeah. Little bounce there at the end of the flips or the rolls, just a little. Now you guys see how some of these rolls are super clean and some have just a little bit of bounce at the end, rebound. That's his stick. That's the sticks. That's what he's doing with the sticks. Sometimes the stick is returning to center just a little smoother than others, and it just goes to show what a difference you can make with your sticks if you try. The tune may not be perfect, but you can make a lot of difference in the sticks. I see the oscillation you're talking about. I wouldn't even call it an oscillation. I don't know what I would call it, but it's so sort of subtle. Canonically, I would associate that with excess D gain, amplifying noise and causing vibration. I definitely see it. It's so subtle. And I'm not sure necessarily whether you guys can see it in the stream. You probably can. But yeah, let's look at your let's look at, well, let's start by looking at your gyros, just like I always do, just to see what's what. And we'll turn smoothing off by pressing the S key. And I see some noise here. The thickness of the lines indicates how much vibration is occurring. The lines in general are not excessively thick. Nothing jumps out as problematic here. The thickness of the lines that we're seeing here, this pitch line is getting a little thick. It's a little suspicious. This yaw line is wonderful. This roll line is pretty good. And the pitch line is a little suspicious, but not hugely problematic, especially since I have smoothing turned off. Let's take a look at the pitch axis, since that's the potentially slightly suspiciously problematic one. You asked, Robert, you're asking, is he running one shot? Let's find out about that. No, he's running multi-shot synced. So there you go. And his rate is 8K, 4K. That's doable. I do that all the time. 8K, 4K on an F3, no problem there. Ooh, sample rate 1 of 1. Ooh, sampling at 4K. Well, aren't we special? That's a lot of samples, buddy. I don't know. Oh, sorry, you guys. You don't need to know that I have email. Okay, so let's look at the roll axis now. And what I ideally would like to see, there's your flip. See these spikes here? That's got to be RC command. There's nothing wrong with that. These spikes here, if we bring up RC command, I bet that they will, yeah, see, notice the stair stepping in RC command? That's the sampling rate of the stick input. It's sampled at a certain period, and you can see you've got the stair steps here, and the stair steps are causing D term spiking. So you can see the D term here is jumping, jump, 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 in time with this RC command steps. There's nothing wrong with that, and in fact, because we're having problems with straight and level flight, the sticks aren't actually moving much, and that's not actually an issue. But if you're wondering why the D term is so active here, that's probably why. Your D gains are not particularly high, so there's no reason to suspect that and your noise level was not particularly high, so there's no reason to suspect that D gain is the cause here. Canonically, when you see that kind of rough road vibration, it's a little like you're driving over a bumpy road, canonically that's excess D gain, although these days I don't think I see that much anymore at all. And your D gains are not that high, so I don't feel like this is a D gain problem. And if you look at the D term here, when you're not sort of flipping out, the P and the D are they're not hyperactive. There's not big magnitude swings. If I turn the smoothing on, there we go. This is almost better to look at with the smoothing turned on. Like you can see there's some high frequency noise here, but that's not too abnormal. So if I turn the smoothing on and get rid of the high frequency noise, there's no point where the D or the P are flipping out with big magnitude swings. Did you calibrate the ESCs? Well, that's an interesting question. If the issue was an uncalibrated ESC, then we would see that in the motor traces. Ooh, that's some big spikes in the motors. You're going to get some warm motors. Sound like Morty now. I don't know, Rick. You should really calibrate these ESCs. I can't do Rick, though. I can only do Morty. Yeah, we got to see a full throttle scenario. That's where miscalibrated ESCs would come out. Oh, where was it? No. You see, if we had miscalibrated ESCs, then we would see one ESC go to max and the others hang below. And we don't see any motors go to max. That's interesting. Yeah. That's tough. Yep, I'm sorry. I think this is going to be one that I can't solve for you. There's nothing in your trace. I'm going to look at the pitch axis just on principle, and then the yaw axis. I got to look at the yaw axis, right? There's nothing in your trace that jumps out as like an obvious problem with your tune. Your tune looks fine. Your gains are not particularly high. Let's look at your yaw axis real quick. Yeah, see, nothing. There's nothing bad about any of your traces. So the thing to suggest is the sort of uh, bucket of things that always get suggested when people have these weird oscillations. Soft mount the flight controller. Try a notch filter. Check out a notch filter and try to tune the notch filter. And Betaflight 3.001 actually gives you 2 notch filters, so you can actually like try and get rid of peaks on pitch and roll. Or hello, why can't I? No, it's because there's too many samples. There we go. Oh, come here, gyro. Yeah, so if we look at the gyro for roll, oh, it did it again. Stop it. Oh, that's a bug. That's a bug right there. I move that slider and it just, what happens? Where'd it go? So, max motor noise. Yeah. So unfortunately I can't zoom in here because, there we go. Max motor noise is 303 hertz, but you can see that doesn't quite correspond to the center of the notch filter. So you may be able to move the center frequency of the notch a little bit to filter that a little better and get rid of some of that noise. I don't know. That's the direction I would go, though. Anyway, D-term set point, Robert. Let's find out. Where is that? Where even is that? I don't know where the set point weight is in this screen. Is it even here? I don't see it. Drone Noob. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. I'm on Facebook as the Drone Racing Engineer, and I'm on Instagram as Joshua Bardwell. I haven't actually announced my Instagram, really. I just started using Instagram because I was like, well, Facebook is kind of terrible. Where's my... There we go. There's my Instagram. Facebook is terrible because they never show you my posts because they want me to pay to boost the posts. Except I just learned that Instagram doesn't show you my posts either because there's an algorithm. I don't know. What happened to the days when I could just post something and you would see it? Well, apparently not anymore. Anyway, that's my suggestions for you, Abadonna. Soft mount the flight controller. Try to get rid of vibration as much as possible. Try notch filters. And if you come to the end of your wits, get an F390 ESC, not a BLHeli S ESC, and try that. I know that sounds backwards, but all of the people who are having these problems, one thing they have in common is I think that they're using BLHeli S ESCs. And I think it's a shame to go backwards, but if that got rid of your problem, maybe it would be better. Yeah, you could try a gyro notch, absolutely. Instead of a D-term notch, you could try a gyro notch, absolutely. Oh, great, Aaron. Facebook owns Instagram. Great, that's perfect. It's all going downhill. 2357. Weird oscillation at the 5-second mark. Okay, well, let's do it. Oh, yeah, that's an easy one. Hang on, is this muted? No, there's just no sound. That's an easy one. I don't even need to look at your black box. I can even look at your pre-rendered traces and tell you what it is. Gyro glitches. This is gyro glitches. And that's the yaw axis. You have yaw axis gyro glitches. Because... yeah. Why? You went from a Naze, presumably a Naze 32 Rev 6, to an SP Racing Evo. I don't know why you would be having the same problem on 2 different flight controllers. The Evo does use a 9250 gyro. The Naze uses a 6500. No. It doesn't. The Naze Rev 6. The Naze Rev 6, I don't remember what gyro it is, but it still has the same problem. It has a problematic yaw gyro. Yeah. I'm sorry to say the solution is, I mean, you can soft mount to try and clean it up, but oftentimes you end up buying a new flight controller. I would suggest making sure to buy a flight controller with an MPU 6000 gyro or a 6050, but not a 6500 or a 9250. I know that there are many people out there using the 6500 and the 9250 with no problems, but if you've already bought two of them and they've had this problem, and you want to just maximize your chances of things being good, that's what you should do. Other things you can do are soft mount it with rubber bumpers or rubber standoffs, vibration isolating standoffs. And you can also try putting a capacitor on the PDB to try and remove some electrical noise. These are all things you can do, but that's just a classic gyro glitch. And that's a physical problem in the gyro. Noise is causing the gyro to give a spurious reading, and there's ultimately the way to fix that is to get a new gyro and a different board. The thing is, many people don't have any problem with the SP Racing Evo, and then occasionally somebody does. And there have been some suggestions that there are different batches of chips going out to the market, maybe, where some of them are bad and some of them are good, or some of them are marginal. And if your copter doesn't have a lot of vibration, it'll be fine. But if it does have a lot of vibration, then it'll have this problem, and it's really frustrating. It's frustrating for you because you're having the problem, which is it's most frustrating for you. But it's frustrating for me because I want to give you answers. If you have a problem, I want to give you an answer that tells you how to fix it. Do 1, 2, 3 things and you'll fix it. And with these gyro glitches, it's so unpredictable who's going to experience them and who isn't. But that's absolutely what a gyro glitch looks like. There's nothing else that would cause that. And so that's the answer. The answer is soft mount and see if it goes away. Do everything you can to get vibration, keep vibration from getting into the gyro. But notch filtering and low pass filtering will not get rid of it because it is so extreme that there's the amount of filtering it would take to get rid of this gyro glitch would be so high the copter would be unflyable. So you're not going to get it with soft filters, but with vibration isolation, you may get it. And if it ultimately doesn't go away, get a board with a 6000 or 6500 gyro. That's the takeaway. Flying Mantis comparing gyro to RC command. Yeah, but I think if you want to know how good a tune is, you just fly it and you need to feel it. Here's the thing. Especially with Betaflight 3.0 and presumably Raceflight and heck, probably KISS too, although I don't have as much experience with it. These firmwares have gotten so good that the flyable range of PIDs is so wide. You can have P gain of 3 and P gain of 11 and have no oscillations, have no bad nothing that would make you go, oh no, this is no good. Like this is bad, right? And so it's just a question of how you like the stick feel to feel and how sharp you want your copter to fly versus how soft. And so you can't look at RC command and the gyro and say, well, that's incorrect, unless you're looking for something like oscillations or bounce, right? So I don't think that's as useful as you might think it would be, because the copter will oftentimes be flying very well, and you might just want it flying different. Comparing RC command to the gyro will tell you if the copter's flying badly, but these days we have such a wide tunable range of ESC, of PID values, that the copter is often not going to fly badly unless your PIDs are just way, way off. So I think that's less useful than it used to be. Okay, 2357, we're going to go to 2362 now. Jack Scarecrow asks, this is my first stab at using Blackbox. I watched lots of videos, it's tuning, it's over my head. Input of my flight results. Getting some prop wash and oscillation. Lower my roll P. Trying to show the flaws in my tune. The 5040s combined, the 5040 props combined with 2300 kV motors is not going to give you the most power, but it should be a very, very tunable combination. The 2300 has plenty of torque. The 5040 is not a very heavy prop. You should be able to get a very, very good tune with this setup, as long as there's nothing like crazy wrong with your build. What should you show on Blackbox Explorer? You should show nothing. You should just give me the log. You should upload the log, and you did. Good. That's what you should do. Don't show me anything. Don't pre-render the overlay like you've done here. That's just it clutters it up. I don't need to see that. I can set the log up how I want it, right? So just give me the log and I'll figure it out. And here, yeah. I'm doing a live feedback right now. I do it on almost all submissions, and you don't have to apologize for being a noob. Welcome to the neighborhood. I think you're right, Armed Monkey. They're all the same. Rev 6s are if they're 65. I thought they were 6500s. Hang on. Sorry for the loud noise. The reason I was confused, Armed Monkey and everybody else, is that the Naze 32 Rev 6, I've remembered it now. It has the 6500 gyro, but it doesn't run on SPI. And I was like, wait, no, the Rev 6 doesn't use SPI. Why would it have the 6500? I don't know why, but that's how they did it. I'm going to hope that this volume is not too loud for you guys. Let's have a look. So I didn't see any prop wash there. That's the kind of scenario where prop wash would have come out. You weren't going very fast, though, so you didn't end up sliding backwards very much. But the lack of prop wash there tells me something. No, no oscillations on high throttle. I think Betaflight started coming with TPA, like 20 points of TPA as a default, somewhere around 3.0 or maybe 2.9. And ever since that happened, I mean, there was a period where it was fashionable to say that the Betaflight was so good that you don't need TPA anymore. But then at some point, it started getting added back in as defaults, and I think high throttle oscillations have basically gone away. Ruben, that's normal. It's because Betaflight is very slow at downloading Blackbox logs from Flash. The solution to your problem is to use an open log device or a flight controller with a built-in SD card. That's how long it takes. Yeah, it shouldn't take hours. No, you're right. About 40 minutes to an hour for a 16 meg flash is I think normal. If you're slower than that, I don't know why. Okay, getting back to this video. So that was another place where prop wash oscillation might have come out. You're sort of drifting downwards and turning, and I didn't see any oscillation there. That's not a very challenging prop wash situation, but if your tune was worse than it is, then you would have seen some prop wash there. So your tune is in the right direction. Overall, the tune looks decent. It's much easier to feel out an overtuned than an undertuned copter by watching a video. Your copter is definitely not overtuned, and so my suggestion is always, if you're new at tuning, is to continue raising the P gains until they are way too high, until you're getting definite oscillations, and you're like, no, this is too much, and you want to know what the copter feels like at various levels of P gain. And you could have a copter that's maybe a P gain of 4, and you're like, oh yeah, that feels pretty good. And then you raise it to 6 or 7, and you're like, oh, I like this much better. And then you raise it to 8 or 10, and you're like, oh wow, that's sharp. But I see some oscillation starting to come out. And then you raise it to 13, and you're like, oh no, that's too much oscillation. But until you've gone through all those steps, you might think a P gain of 4 feels amazing, and without never knowing what a P gain of 7 might feel like, okay? So, pardon me. I would suggest working up the P gains, work one axis at a time or work both axes. I've given different advice at different periods. Overall, your copter, I don't see anything jumping out as problematic. You're not getting prop wash oscillation. That's good. And again, that's probably got something to do with the fact that you're using relatively torquey motors on relatively light props. The motors are torquey for the props, rather. The 2300 kV motor, red bottoms are not like ultra torquey motors, like a 2206 2000 kV would be a pretty torquey motor. But for a 5040 tri-blade prop, 2300 kV 2205 motor is plenty of torque to shove that prop around. And that means it can accelerate and decelerate the prop with authority. And that means that during prop wash scenarios, the prop can be doing what it's supposed to be doing, what it's being told to do, and that's good. So overall, your tune looks good. If you want to get rid of prop wash, raise the D gains, raise them slowly in steps of maybe 5 or 10, and watch for hot motors each time you raise it. Fly a little bit, fly a little aggressively, and feel if the motor comes down hot. And if it comes down hot, drop your D gain back down again. Raise your D gain indiscriminately, and you will smoke a motor. You will burn a motor, and then you'll be sad because that's $20 down the tubes. But yeah, if you want to try and get rid of the prop wash, raise your D gain until you feel the motor starting to get hot. I just did this for my copter. I noticed when I did the Matty Stunts video, there were a lot of sharp flips upside down. And I don't actually do a lot of those ultra sharp moves when I'm flying. I'm more sort of smooth flyer, I think. But I was doing those sharp flips, and I noticed I had a lot of bounce and sort of ringing. And I thought, wow, my tune looks terrible. I never noticed it because I don't do those moves very much when I'm flying. I don't do the sharp snaps. And so I was like, well, I'm fixing that. I'm fixing that. I'm not having any aspect of my tune be suboptimal, right? And I started raising the D gains. And my D gains on my QAVR, do not try this at home, folks. They're like at 80. Did I blow your mind there for a minute? Yeah, the motors are coming down mildly warm. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I don't know what to tell you. But the flight handling got better, and the motors aren't coming down hot. So there you go. But yeah, so I would say raise your P gain through a range of values up to maybe 13 or 15. Look for oscillations, and once it gets too high, lower it back down again. But just get a sense for how it flies. Fly 1 or 2 packs at each of those settings, from 4 to 7 to 8 to 10 to 13, and work your D gains up to try and get rid of that prop wash. Those would be my suggestions. Peter, is the audio out for you? Is the audio out for anybody else? I guess if the audio was out, you would... Hang on, I can confirm that. Is the audio out? Hello? It's all good. Those are my monitoring headphones. Peter, it's just you. Reload the stream. Okay. If you want tips on what to show on Blackbox Explorer, just watch my live streams. I always do the same, like 4 things. So it's all good there. That was 2362. We'll go now to 2368. New to Blackbox, had a friend look at it. We made some changes having really bad bounce back on flip and roll. You tried raising D, but the motor started getting hot. That is the right thing to be looking for. If you're having bounce back on flip and roll, the first thing to do, I think, is to change the T gain, the P gain. And I would try raising the P gain. Here's how P gain is going to work. If your P gain is low, at the end of a flip or roll, you will have one sort of big, soft jerk. It'll go, whoom, kind of like that, okay? As your P gain gets higher, that jerky stop will get sharper, right? And then as your P gain gets perfect, you'll get a sharp stop with maybe a little bit of a small sort of ringing. And as your P gain continues to go up, then it'll, at the end of a flip or roll, it'll go, woo, kind of like a shiver, like woo, okay? And that's the P getting higher. What you want is you want to manipulate the P gain until the bounce back at the end of the flip or roll gets as small as it can, and maybe even a little bit on the side of that shiver, a little high, and then raise D to sort of tame it back down again. Okay? And you just find the best spot for P where you get the best performance you can, and then you find the best spot for D where it sort of brings it in. But if you can't raise D because the motors are getting hot, then life is going to get harder for you. So you may need to add some filtering in order to allow you to raise D. But the problem there is that the more filtering you have, the more latencies there's going to be in the PID loop. And that means that you'll have actually, at a certain point, you filter so much that the D term can't do its job, and raising D doesn't make things better. So what you do is you get your P about perfect, and then you start to raise D. And if the motors get hot, you filter a little more. Maybe you use a notch filter, or maybe you lower your cutoff. And then you can raise D a little more, and maybe things get better. But eventually you're filtering so much that now the whole thing just starts to go to hell. Okay? So that's the general approach to take there, and that's what you should do. All right? Didn't even have to look at your black box. Okay. Okay. Next is going to be 2378. That was quick. This is from Seago. He's new in tuning and has learned quite a bit. Thanks, thank you. I got to say, thank you, Walter. Walter and CTZ Snooze are two people who jump out to me as very, very helpful on RC groups. And I'm not as active on RC groups as I once was because I'm so busy making videos. And I like to think that I help people in other ways than by commenting on RC groups. So fine. But it's really nice. Especially these two threads, my video responses thread, and then I have another thread, mini quad tuning from start to finish, that is still active. And those are kind of my babies, and I feel a little bit responsible when people ask questions there. But so often I go to answer a question, and Walter or CTZ Snooze has already done it. They're super active. They're very, very knowledgeable about PID tuning. I mean, they could do my job. They just don't want to. They don't want to make videos, but they know as much or more about PID tuning. Walter actually maintains the wiki. I'm sure he doesn't do it by himself, and I don't mean to discredit anybody else, but yeah, Walter's super active with the wiki, and just massive thanks to Walter and CTZ Snooze, who do so much on RC groups. So yeah. Trying to tune your second quad. Reach a point where the roll is quite good. Still getting bounced back from the flips. Well, I got to tell you, the same thing I told the last guy on bounce back from flips. Sorry to say, I'm not going to tell you much from your Blackbox log because, like I said earlier, you have such a wide flyable range of PIDs that it's really hard these days for me to look at a Blackbox log and say, oh no, that's bad. It would have to be really bad. You can have your P gains at a high number, and the copter will still be relatively well behaved. And you have to really look for edge cases like the end of a flipper roll or a really extreme sharp turn where prop wash comes out. That's where all the tuning happens now. If all you're doing is just flying around, the copter will fly well with many different sets of PIDs. And the unfortunate thing there is that you have to just go back to the actual flight characteristics to try and get the tune good. That you can't tune a perfect stop from a flipper roll just by looking at the black box. So take the advice I gave to the previous poster and try and tune that pitch axis using the P and D gains as best you can. One more thing I'll say about that is it used to be that if you had bounce back at the end of a flip or roll, it could be I-term windup. The I-term would accumulate error and then try to unwind the error or counteract the error at the end of the move, and you get rebound. So excess I gain used to be a cause of rebound at the end of flips and rolls. And I'm happy to tell you that with Betaflight 3.0, it started earlier than that, but 3.0 really took it to the next level. You can almost completely ignore I-term windup. There's a dynamic I-term behavior that means that you can raise your I gains much higher than you used to without negative effects. So as you're tuning, that's one less thing, one fewer thing that you need to think about. All right, there we go. That went quickly. 2378, 2387. Check out my logs and see what you think. Trying to get the whole tuning thing down. Okay, let's do it. Let's start just by watching your video. This is why I'm glad I downloaded this stuff beforehand, because that video would take a while to download. A little while. I hear a little vibration there. I see it too. There's a little bit of a rebound at the end of your flips and rolls. That's the kind of edge case that I would be trying to sort of, if I was going for the perfect tune, I would be trying to focus on. See, when you do a flip or roll there without the sharp stop at the end, it looks really good. There is some kind of a shutter there. I associate that kind of shutter. Let me show it to you again. Right here. Right there. There. It's almost like a nervous shudder. I think it's because the wind is blowing and your D gain is too high. D gain, that kind of thing feels like high D gain to me, because P term oscillation is going to be a regular oscillation, and D term is going to be kind of random, because D term is amplifying the noise that's already there, whereas P term is bringing out a mechanical characteristic of the system. So since the noise itself is pseudo-random, the D term noise is also random. That kind of sort of twitchiness that you're having there definitely feels like high D gain to me. Let's see if I'm right. If your D gains are in the 20s, I'm not going to know what to tell you. Come on now. Why won't you open? Do you not want to? Oh, what's going on here? How big is that file? 8 meg. That's pretty big. What are you doing? Okay, well. Oh, bugger. I may not be able to open this one, I'm sorry to say. It's going to crash when I try to open it. Oh, no, it got it. Okay, fantastic. That's good. So what's your D gains? Oh, dagnabbit. Your D gains are just completely normal. Alrighty. Then your board is loose. You have a loose board. The board is loose and it's rattling. That's the next thing I can think of that would cause that kind of semi-random whatever. Todd, I'm sorry to tell you that the answer is probably no. The thing is, if you submit me a log, Todd asks if I fly a Team Nana, would submitting a log or vid be remotely helpful? If you submit me a log and it's just you kind of flying around your backyard slowly, the copter is tuned perfectly for that kind of flight. You're not pushing the flight envelope enough to expose deficiencies in the tune. So I would say for people in your scenario, Todd, focus on becoming a better pilot, not a better tuner. The beta flight defaults will already probably fly well enough that you will not experience any bad flight characteristics that will be holding you back. And as you become a better pilot, you will start to reach places where you go, well, the copter is doing something I don't like. And it's not because of my inability, like when you're a beginner and you're trying to fly and you don't know how to coordinate turns, right? You have real trouble. The copter's doing something you don't like, but it's because you don't know how to coordinate turns, right? that as you become a better pilot, the copter does things you don't like, and it's not because of something you're doing wrong, it's something the copter's doing wrong, and that's where you start really focusing on tuning. In the beginning, though, there's not a lot of point in submitting me a log of you kind of just hovering or flying slowly around, because the copter is essentially flying perfectly under those flight conditions, and there's nothing to critique. So that's the answer. Your D gain is not excessive. Yeah. So what could cause that? Yeah. Your gyros are probably fine. Let's see. Your gyros are fine. They're fine. There's nothing wrong there. Yeah, those little shutters though. That's the same thing. Is that mid-throttle oscillations? Ooh, look here. Look at roll right here. You see that? Let me zoom in a little. Right there. Is that a mid-throttle oscillation? Oh, look at the throttle. Oh, let's find another place where the throttle does that. Here we go. Throttle's going up. Oh, no oscillation though. Okay, never mind. No, no oscillation. It was something else. Yeah. So the only thing I notice about your flight so far is that little roughness, which I would normally associate with excess D gain, but you clearly do not have excess D gain or excess noise, so that's not the problem. No prop wash there. Very nice. See, all good. The copter's flying very nicely. Right there, though. Do you see that little shutter as he was flying? I just got to think that... Here, I'll show you again. Listen to the motors and watch carefully the video. Right there. So, yeah. I wonder if it's just that it's a windy day. Maybe you could try raising your D gains. Your D gains are super low. I know I was like, oh, your D gains are probably too high, but now I'm saying, oh, maybe they're too low. Sounds contradictory. The thing is, if your D gains are too high and you get in a windy scenario, the wind will create noise and the motors will just flip out, right? Like somebody who's had way too much coffee and you touch them, you poke them, and they go flip out. Coffee doesn't really do that to people. I don't know what I'm talking about. But on the other hand, the thing is, wind is a very rapidly changing aerodynamic situation, and the D term is the only thing that is fast enough to respond to that. So if your D gains are low, maybe I'm just conjecturing what's happening is that the copter isn't able to really keep up with the wind, and you're getting those shudders. We know that it's not something like a loose camera because we can hear the motors shuddering in time with the vibrations. So it's not just a loose camera, though. Your tune is really close to right on those flips and rolls. I still see the tiniest bit of bounce at the end, and since your D gains are so low, I would immediately take your D gains up to like 35, assuming you have a relatively noise-free copter and you're not going to smoke motors. I would take them up immediately and see if that made the stops at the end of flips and rolls a little cleaner. Anyway, there you go for that. We're going to call that one done. All right, see you later, Robert. And 2387. Oh, I'm going to push through and finish these last three, and then I will have a clear queue for the first time in God knows how long. So even though we're coming up on midnight my time, 2 hours, we're going to just push on through for another 15 or 20 minutes, and we'll finish up the queue. And I don't know what I'll do then. I haven't had a zero queue in I don't know how long. 2404. I do too, Armed Monkey. I typically have higher eye gain than the defaults, although in the latest beta flights, the eye gains have come up. The defaults have come up. I usually have eye gain in the 50s or 60s. And I find that the copter, I hate it when I move the throttle and the nose of the copter comes up or down, throttle dependent. I hate that. It sticks out to me like I just notice it so much and it bugs the crap out of me. So I raise the eye gain, especially on pitch, not actually so much on roll, but especially on pitch. I raise the eye gain to try and keep the nose just rock steady uh, in all circumstances. Um, that's me. I think the D gain defaults are lower than they need to be because if D gain is too high, you smoke motors, and Boris doesn't want people saying, "Dude, your firmware smoked my motors." So the D gain defaults are lower than they need to be for most copters. But if you have a very noisy copter, they're in a safe level where you're not going to smoke your motors. But I think the majority of people who are running good setups with good motors, not cheap motors or motors that have been really bashed up, I think most people can raise the D gain significantly from what it is. Now, if you smoke your motors because of that advice, it's not on me, but that's my opinion. Sickocrow asks, serious shaking in the quad in the mid throttle range. So, yeah. I already talked earlier about mid throttle oscillations. I'll just recap because you may not watch the whole live stream. Mid throttle oscillations are almost always a frame resonance issue or something like that. You want to, because that's the only thing that could cause oscillations at mid throttle, but not at high throttle. So you want to look at your frame, look for any physical damage to the frame, like a loose screw, a cracked plate, a broken standoff. Is the flight controller snugged down? And then also check to see that the camera doesn't have a loose lens, a loose board element, or something like that. If you want to, you can look earlier at, well, I think it was one of the very first ones. Hold on, let me just take one stab at finding it. Mid-throttle oscillations. No. This is it. It's 2342 had mid-throttle oscillations as well, and you should go ahead and take a look at my discussion of that one if you want more information. Okay? Okay. I'll take a perfunctory look at your black box log just to make sure there's not something unique that I've missed. But in general, mid-throttle oscillations, the black box log isn't going to give us anything that we don't already know. But hey, I could be wrong. This time could be the first time. Gyro traces are clean and thin. Oh, hang on. When I turn smoothing off, not so much. The roll axis is completely bonkers. Okay, so that lends credence to the idea that you've got maybe a loose flight controller would be my first guess. A broken standoff or a loose nut. That's my first guess. Because the oscillation is on just the roll axis and not the others, and a loose nut might cause that. That is way, way too much vibration on the roll axis. That is an unhealthy amount. No normal copter should have that amount. You definitely have something mechanically wrong. Your issue is not mid-throttle oscillations. Your issue is that you have way too much noise on the roll axis. You got to find out what's causing that. Start by looking at the nuts and the standoffs of your flight controller. That's the first place to look. Next, check all your plates to see if you have any cracked plates, a crack in your bottom plate or something, and maybe a loose nut on a standoff, but I don't think so much. Anyway, that's what you got to do. You got to figure out what's causing this vibration on the roll axis. See, I almost didn't even look at the black box log, but something inside me said, check it out. Take one quick look at it. And sure enough, your roll axis is bonkers with vibration. Okay, good. Well, glad I looked. Yeah, Armed Monkey, I feel the same way. And I think especially because I do most of my flying freestyle, as a racer, I don't mind having to sort of, really work the sticks to get it to do what I want. But when I'm doing freestyle and I'm doing some kind of a move, I'm not always succeeding, but I'm trying to control the camera angle so precisely with so much control to make the camera go exactly where I want it to. And when I raise the throttle and the nose goes, and it just ruins the effect for me. I hate it so much. And that's why I try and run higher eye gains. Okay. 20409 is number 2387. And my logs, just looking for general tuning advice. Okay, let's do it. No. Something ain't right. 2387 I already did. Sorry, guys. Sorry. 2404. 2418 is the one. Sorry, it's getting late. I'm getting tired. I'm getting sloppy. But we're going to make it. We're going to finish this out. Nobody submit any more logs. Well, in the next 10 minutes. We're going to be at 0. I have a helix that is failing. No, the helix is amazing. Don't say anything bad about the helix. This post does not exist. I have a helix that's falling when I am doing consecutive rolls. The quad rolls out of the sky. 119.5. All right, let's look at your log. Roger Lima. Yeah, I don't know. I enjoy my contributions. I do. I enjoy it. I make a little bit. I'm making a little bit. If you feel like I should be making more, you can go to this is my one plug. Since you mentioned it, if you feel like I should be making more for all I contribute to the scene, you can go to patreon.com and here patreon.com/thedroneracing-engineer, and you can become a patron of mine. Even a patron at say the $1 or $2 or dollar level is very valuable. I have 184 patrons. Let's see, 621 divided by 184. The average person contributes $3.37, but altogether that adds up to not an insubstantial amount. It's still at an hourly rate is pennies. So if you look at that and go, oh, he's doing fine. I'm still not getting paid nearly enough for the amount of work I put in, but you know, I get my rewards and thanks from you guys and knowing I'm helping you fly better and entertaining you, and you know, I'm something wrong with me. I just enjoy this. But yeah, if you feel like I need more financial support than I'm getting, you can contribute directly to that if you're so inclined. Okay, anyway. Were we on 2418? No, not that. Sorry, I clicked the wrong button. Sorry if that did something to the feed. 2418. Let's see what we got. And it is in 119.5. Okay. Let's just see what happens at 119.5. And what I really want to see here, when we've got a copter that's falling out of the sky, what I really want to look at is the motors. Uh-huh. Oh, look at that. What are you doing? What are you doing here? Let me look at your sticks for a minute. Hold on. And I'm going to set the playback speed to like 50%. So I can see what you're doing with your sticks. Left turn, coordinated left turn, throttle punch, roll, throttle punch, roll. Interesting. And then you're done. No, full. Are you done? Full throttle. And chop. No, you're done. You're done. You're trying to correct here. You dropped the throttle. Let me look at the gyro real quick. Oh, I can just look at the 3D model. It'll tell me. There's no way that you're stable here. The accelerometer is off. That's why you're 3. So if your accelerometer is turned off, your 3D model won't move. Even though the accelerometer is, the 3D model is not entirely based on the accelerometer. But yeah, okay. I'm going to look at your gyros here. Yeah, and I can see that your gyros show me that the copter is tumbling here. Hello. Do you want to be on the internet? Do you just want to interrupt my live stream? Come here. Here, be on the internet. Here's a cat. That was a bad idea. Yeah, the motor goes to full. The back left motor has stopped making thrust. That's why it goes to full, and we can see that the copter is tumbling. The gyros are just sort of all over the place until the copter hits the ground and crashes. So the question is, why did the back left motor stop making thrust? And that's not a question that we can answer with your black box, but it's a question we can start to answer with your black box, because look what your min throttle is. Min throttle is 1020 presumably. Let's just confirm that. 1021. Well, aren't you? That's an interesting value. 1021 is very likely too low. It's too low. And the first thing I would do anytime you're having death rolls like this is raise your min throttle. Raise it like 40 points. Okay, let's not beat around the bush, okay? Raise min throttle to 1060. You may not like how the copter flies necessarily, but raise it to 1060 and see if it solves your problem. With a min throttle that low, my first guess is that it's too low and the motor is stopping in flight. And you may say, well, I tested it on the bench. Oh, you're still there, aren't you? You say, I tested it on the bench and 1020, it spun at 1020. Yeah, but on the bench, you don't have a prop on it. And on the bench, the wind isn't blowing at it. When you're doing all these flips and rolls, the wind is blowing on the copter. The air is pushing on it. And a min throttle that works on the bench may not work on the air. It will not work on the air. So that's the first thing I would say. If you raise the min throttle from 1021 to, say, 1060, and the problem goes away, now start working it back down again and find the actual minimum value where the copter still doesn't have this death roll. If you raise it to 1060 and you still have the same problem, then min throttle is not the problem. It's something else, like a desync or any number of other things it could be. But that's my first guess. And when I see that your min throttle is that low, I think that's very likely to be the cause of your problem. Okay? That's what I would say. Gosh, you guys, everybody wants to set min throttle as low as they can, and I don't know why. You're kind of just pushing the bounds. I mean, I've been there. You want everything to be as close to the edge as it can, but if you set min throttle as low as it possibly can be, you're going to get these death rolls, and so many people who are experiencing them. It's such a simple thing, and you're driving yourself crazy. You're pulling your hair out trying to figure out what's wrong with your ESCs or your flight controller. I know at least one person, and probably more, who have bought a new flight controller because their min throttle was too low and they couldn't figure out why their copter was death rolling. And they went, it's a piece of junk. And they bought a new one and the same freaking thing happened. Just raise your min throttle. If you're having death rolls, the very first thing to do, especially at the end of flips and rolls, okay? The very first thing to do is raise your min throttle by like 40 points. And if it goes away, that's your problem. Okay. Especially if your min throttle is, if you're like your motor spin at 1020 and your min throttle is 1025, that's your problem. If your motor spin at 1020 and your min throttle is at 1080, okay, well, that's probably not your problem. That's a sufficient buffer, a margin, that it's probably not an issue. But all right, we're going to call that one done, and we're going to go to the very last one, which is 2420, and I'm so excited. I can't remember the last time that I actually had an empty queue. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. Nothing. I'm going to go make videos. And then later there'll be 20 more entries. But I'm so excited to have caught up with you guys. Fusebox, you are the luckiest person in the world because you submitted on October 25th, and I've gotten back to you in only like 4 or 5 days. Don't get used to it. Feedback on tune. The quad will freak out and cause a crash. Reversing the motors in BL Heli only causes problems if you're using, I think it's the DYS XM30. It's one of the DYS ESCs. I don't remember which ones exactly. But most ESCs, most BL Heli ESCs have no problem with that. Some people have misrepresented the situation, as I understand it, misrepresented it, and said that all BL Heli ESCs have a problem with software reversing. That is not true. That is not my understanding. It's only like 1 or 2 specific DYS ESCs that have that problem. So don't assume that's a general issue. You're using ZTW ESCs. They have no issue with software reversing. No positive results confirms that. Let's take a look at your black box and see if there's anything interesting we can see in there. And let's look for a place where you lose it. Presumably it would be at the end of the file. Oh, there you go. That kind of looks like, I know you're doing a roll. Okay, nothing weird there. Oh, but then I think you lost it. Did you lose it? Motor goes to max. Yeah, now look what happens here. Let me get the gyro out of here. Look what happens here. Notice that initially both the purple and the yellow motor go up. And the reason for that is that you're doing a roll. So 2 of the motors are going to go up and 2 of them are going to go down. Oh, actually, it's when you're returning the stick. Sorry, you're ending the roll. Same thing, though. The left side motors are going to go faster and the right side motors are going to go slower, or vice versa, depending on which direction the roll is going. But notice that then the yellow motor continues to go to max and the purple motor goes down. That indicates that the yellow motor has stopped making thrust. When a motor stops making thrust, the flight controller asks for more thrust, right? It says, give me more. You're not giving me enough. Push you harder until it gets to the max, and then it just stays there. The next thing that happens is that the other motor will go down in order to keep the thrust that the motors are making balanced. Because if the yellow motor stops making thrust, that arm will start to dip, and the flight controller will reduce the thrust on the corresponding other arm to keep the copter level, or keep the attitude similar. Board quads, XM30s, yeah, that could be reversing. That's a DYSESC, so that's fine. So this is a classic case where the back left motor has stopped making thrust, and we just need to figure out why. Now your min throttle is 1060, which is relatively high, but let's take a look at your min throttle 1060, max throttle 2000. Where's min command? Surely that's in here. Hello? It isn't it? Where is it? I don't know. Well, I don't see it. Isn't that interesting? Okay, well, presumably it's 1,000, I guess. So that, I would still raise your min throttle just to see if that's the issue. But usually if min throttle is the issue, you'll see the problem at the end of the move. Here you've just started to return the stick. Nevertheless, you see that the motor is at idle, and then suddenly it spins up. That's indicative of a case where min throttle too low would cause a problem. Make sure your ESCs are calibrated, your endpoints are calibrated also. And then it would just, if that doesn't solve it, we need to start looking at anything else that would cause the motor to fail to spin up. So you certainly could play with demag. You can also play with startup power. In some cases, people have said reducing startup power in BL. This is a BL Heli setup, by the way. In BL Heli S, if you have this problem, you can reduce the startup power to 0.125, not 1.25, but 0.125. That reduced startup power will cause the ESC to softly start the motor up instead of wah, go, and causing the desync. So those are things you can try. Raise min throttle, but your min throttle is probably already high enough. Make sure the ESCs are calibrated correctly. And try changing the startup power and the demag setting. Try changing startup power to 0.125 and demag to high. Try those things one at a time and see if any of them fixes your problem. And there you go. That is going to bring us to the end of the live stream. 2 hours, 20 minutes. And I've done all of them. My queue is now empty. Amazing. There you go. That's going to do it for tonight. Thank you guys for tuning in. The cat is gone. No more pets. Basement cat. She's ignoring me now. Yeah, no. Yeah, that's going to do it. I'm going to sign off. It's late here. Thank you guys. It's probably late where a lot of you guys are later here than it is. They're later for you than it is for me. Thank you for tuning in. The live feed will go up if you missed any part of this. It will go up as soon as I can get the metadata, the video description, and etc. added, and as soon as YouTube finishes processing it. So it will be up later today. Thank you as always, and happy flying.